Just sharing this right now before I get it all set up. Okay. It's taking forever to post. Hi, Patricia. Come on. Hang with me. I am running on summertime right now, guys. I said 3 Central, but it's summer. So running on summertime. Okay. There we go. Got my YouTube up. Okay. It's shared. All right. And I'm a sweaty mess because it's been hot here in Illinois. We're having an unusually hot summer. And so it's very hot and humid. And my husband has the air on, but it's not on very high. He was here all day. He just left. But anyways, let's get into the subject. Let me know. Yay, Kaylin, we've missed you. It'll be good to see you again. Yeah, school's starting back up. I think you're going to be starting school around the same time I start back up piano lessons. And then a week or two later, I'm going to start school for my kids. I want to start before September this year. So that is the goal. So yeah, we've definitely missed your smiling face around here. Can't wait to see you again. But I am glad summer is winding to a close. I'm ready to get back to routine and schedule. I do well on that. So anyways, I wanted to talk about this today. I was actually asking Kelly. I said, Kelly, what should I talk about for Gently Led Sisters? And her first idea was tell them to love their kids. I was like, oh, that's so sweet. But I talk about that all the time. So I was thinking, racking my head for an idea, and I figured it'd be a good one to talk about biblical womanhood in modern times. Since this is a podcast dedicated to women living out their roles, their biblical roles, and trying to be the best Christians that they can be. So, yep. So I decided to talk about this today. So I believe that the Bible is an unchanging book, even in the day and age that we live in. However, obviously being a wife and mom will look different with each time era, and even being Kaylin, a single Christian girl, will look a little different from each time era. We have things now that those in the 1800s didn't have, for the good and for the worse. We have more distractions, but we also have more things available to help us run the home, be a good homemaker, wife, all that stuff. We have Chat GPT to come up with a menu plan. Everyone here knows my thoughts about AI. I do believe AI is sucking the creativity out of the world. But that being said, it can be useful in some situations. I actually asked ChatGPT the other day, hey, what should a 44-year-old woman in perimenopause do for a diet and exercise plan? And it literally printed out everything that I need as far as diet. It gave me a menu sample. It gave me recipes. Okay, it can be kind of cool in some areas. However, I do believe it is taking away creativity from authors, people who really pour. And this is why, for me, I really hate AI, because some of us, we are writers, and we are, I'm not a composer of music, but there are composers of music. And literally in 30 seconds, AI can come up with an entirely new song, where composers pour their heart and soul into their pieces. And as a writer, I pour my heart and soul into everything that I write. It takes me a long time to write a post. One thing that's been nice the last few weeks is I have been able to write more, because I haven't had as much on my plate as far as like teaching hours, school, things like that. So that is one thing I've really been enjoying about my break, is I've been able to write a lot, and everything I do on Facebook is public. So if you just want to look up my name, Cassandra McMurtry, if you want to give me a follow, if you want to read what I've written, it's over there. I just wrote a book review today about a book Jocelyn Zichterman wrote years ago called I Fired God, My Escape from Independent Baptist Cult. Of course, that interests me because I do consider myself IFB. So I wanted to read her experience and give a book review, and I did. And it's over there. Someday I might do a small one for this channel, but I wrote it all in longhand there, and it took me a long time. So I know when I'm going to sit down and write something, I need at least an hour to 2 hours to write it. And I tell my children, mommy's writing, go find something to do. And they're learning that when I'm writing, they just need to leave me alone. And because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time. And so I do believe AI is taking away a lot from writers and composers and people who are into the arts. I do believe AI is stealing a lot of that. However, AI does have its place, and I'm not going to ignore the fact that there are some pretty cool things it can do. So I think as long as we keep our core doctrines the same for being a biblical wife and mom, we can use some of these things to our advantage. I'm not a boomer who thinks that you need to reject all technology and all technology is evil and bad and stay away and blah, blah, blah. Technology has its good parts and it has its bad parts as well. Once again, it comes down to just being balanced as you use these things like technology. We don't have to dress like we just fell off the Ingalls wagon, and we don't need to act like technology is evil or wicked and there's no place for it. So how can we embrace biblical womanhood while also utilizing the tools that we do have? Obviously, the number one thing when it comes to being a biblical woman in this day and age that we live in is keeping the main things the main things. And this is the success. This is the key to success in having a good marriage and having good relationships and raising good, godly children. The key to success is keeping the main things the main things. Number one, love God. That's the main thing that you as a biblical wife and mom can do. Everything centers around that, keeping God as the center, keeping your relationship with him as the center, building your life off of God and his principles, grow close to him, follow his commandments. And part of following his commandments is also going to be following the principles that he outlines for being a Christian wife, being a godly young woman and just being a good Christian. So follow his commandments, live according to the principles in the Bible, especially when it comes to how you interact with your husband. Are you giving him reverence? Are you respecting him? Are you submitting to him even in the hard things? The hard things like he decides something that goes against what you want or your wishes or, whatever. I saw this, someone shared this meme the other day and it was really funny. And it was like, as a young man, I asked an older man the secret to the success in his marriage. And he told me, when my wife and I got married, we decided that I would make the decisions for the big things that came along, and she would make all of the small decisions. He was like, it's been amazing. In 50 years of marriage, we've never had one big decision to make. So I thought that was funny. Very ironic, right? Pretty funny. But yeah, that kind of is how it works in our marriage, not like the meme, but we are a team, right? My husband and I are a team. And I kind of know after almost 25 years of marriage what he's going to like and what he's not. So I'm often the voice even when it comes to our children. If they're doing something I know dad wouldn't approve of, I'm like, your dad would not like this. Sometimes, and I have to remind them often, like, I am the voice of your dad. Okay, I'm saying this because I know this is what your dad would want, because oftentimes I feel like I have to be the bad guy, but it's because I'm with my kids all the time. I'm the one that's there in the home while my husband's gone working or doing other activities. So I just know after 24 years what he would approve of and what he wouldn't approve of. So oftentimes I don't even have to ask him. It's very rare that I get it wrong. So I'm kind of the spokesperson for him. And the kids know that I reverence and I respect him, and I only talk good of him to them. But yeah, have a personal relationship with the Lord. Don't just write off the coattails of your husband. This could be for ministry wives. This could be for anyone else. You alone have to have a personal walk with the Lord. You have to decide that you're going to follow him and, put into practice the things that you're learning in the Bible. Study the Bible for yourself. Really dig into the Bible. Know what you believe and why you believe it. I don't think we should just have this checklist of things that we are like a parrot just following because someone told us to, whether that's our favorite preacher or the preacher that we have normally. I think that we should really know the whys of why we live this way, why we do this, why do we dress this way, why do we talk this way, why do we, do these things that are outlined in God's word. We should know, not just riding up the coattails of our husband. So loving God is number one. That's one of the main things. Number two is loving your husband. And I believe it goes in this order. Love your husband and love him well. Put his needs first. And hopefully, if you're married to a good, godly guy, he will also put your needs first as well. Show the kids how you support and love him. Respect him and his decisions. Whatever he says goes. And yes, there will be big decisions that come along. And you'll have to just, even if you don't agree, you'll have to decide that, you know what, he is making this decision. The outcome of it is going to be on his shoulders, not mine. And we're going to listen to him. We're going to follow along without complaining, without bucking, without fighting, without arguing, all these things. There has to be a main leader in the home. And God set it up so that it is your husband. Now, I do know, and I will throw this caveat out there, I do know that there are a lot of crummy men, and they'll get into churches that teach, the man is the head of the home, the wife is second in command, and the children are, and they'll take it as I can be as big of a jerk as I want, and there's no out for my wife. There's no divorce, she can't leave me. She's stuck with me, whatever. And so they'll do the opposite of what the Bible commands to men, to love and cherish her, and they'll just go to extremes. They'll cheat on her, and they'll do drugs, and they'll, sleep with prostitutes, and, they'll just be as demeaning and horrible and just low life scum to their wives as much as they want. And then all the blame gets put on her when she finally has had enough. And obviously I don't ascribe to that. It's, if you are, and I've always said, if you are with a man that's putting you in danger of your life, you need to get help. You need to seek help from the proper authorities and prosecute him to the full extent of the law. But I'm not talking about that type of man. Okay. So anytime that I'm talking about loving your husband, respecting your husband, submitting to your husband, I'm not talking about putting your life into danger or going against God's commands. This could do with physical intimacy, if he's wanting you to cheat with him, if he's wanting you to do weird things that aren't typically, weird things in the marriage bed that would involve other people, then it is a sin and you've crossed the line, and he has crossed the line. And in those situations, you don't have to submit to that. I'm not talking about anything that goes against the Bible, anything that goes against God's law, anything that's gonna, you're going to be dead because you did it. I'm talking about a normal guy. Okay. A normal guy that really loves the Lord. And even normal guys that love the Lord, they're going to mess up. So you got to give him a grace. You got to extend grace. You got to forgive his mistakes, just like he has to forgive your mistakes. You have to learn to just move on and not bring up things in the past and, whatever. So respect him in his decisions, make the physical relationship priority. This is going to be something that only you as a wife are supposed to be the one giving him. And if you have an understanding husband, he's going to understand that there are different seasons in life, such as 9 months pregnant, postpartum, nursing. There's going to be all types of situations where that's not going to be first on the priority list. And you just have to make it through that season. And it is what it is. And that's fine. There's going to be times like that. But if you're not in the middle of that time, definitely don't let that slide. Try to make that a priority, because you two are the only ones that are supposed to be finding physical connection between you in the marriage bed, which is pure and undefiled, right? Come up with something fun to do with him, whether that's coming up with date nights, like let's go do an escape room. I've tried to get my husband to do that with me, and he says he thinks it's totally Gen Z and he doesn't want to do it, but I've only done one, and it was with the ladies in Orlando, Florida, when we did the pastor's wife retreat this past year. And it was really fun. We were so stupid. I felt like we were so dumb, and we had to keep asking for clues. And it was like one of these escape rooms where you had to ask the people for clues, and you could ask as many times. Like you can only ask 3, 5, but this was unlimited. And I can only imagine what they were thinking when they were watching us, because I don't think we did very well. We did end up escaping the escape room, but they pretty much had to yell at us like, the guy had to open the door, and he's like, because we were just, where do we go? Where do we go? You actually had to run out of the escape room, which my son, who does them all the time, said that he's never really heard of that. But I thought it was fun. That's not something that my husband is big on. So I've had to come up with other things we can do. We both love the water, so we do water things. We both love hiking, so we do a lot of hiking, different things like that. But that's been kind of something that we've like morphed into. We didn't always like those activities when we were younger. So that's something that over the last 10 years we've probably started doing, is a lot more of that. Remember that actions speak louder than words. And you can tell him you love him. You can tell him you respect him. You can tell him he's important. But then if you are constantly putting him down in front of others, if you are constantly running him down, if you are constantly just defying every wish that he has, and it could just be something as easy as, I love it when you make this. Could you make this? No, I'm making this meal that you hate instead. You know, if you're constantly doing that with him, if you are constantly, too tired, or you have a headache, or things, the moon and stars aren't aligned just right, and you're constantly putting him off when it comes to physical affection, that's going to speak a lot louder than things that you say. And then, don't put him down in front of others, and deepen your friendship with him. Your friendship should get deeper as the years go on. And that's really, really important. I'm looking around for a fan because I am so hot. I'm going to be a sweaty mess by the time I leave. It's like my own personal sauna in here. So number 1, love God. Number 2, love your husband. And number 3, love your kids. And the Bible actually tells older women to teach the younger women how to love their husband, how to love their kids. And that's no coincidence, because sometimes our kids are hard to love, as far as just not, we're overwhelmed. They're throwing the 100th fit for the day. And as moms, we're always going to love our kids. Let me rephrase it. Sometimes our kids are hard to like, because we'll always love our kids. Every single one of us. It's just a natural affection. But kids can be very difficult. Kids can be stressful. And I'm not one who tries to paint a false narrative. I understand that it is literally the most fulfilling thing I've ever done, but it's also the most challenging. It's been the most difficult. It will stretch you to the limits. It will push you to the edge of insanity. So, we have to really focus on loving our kids, forgiving our kids, having grace with our kids. And then, like I said before, Kelly actually told me to do the show on tell them to love their kids. So I think that's really cute, though, because it does show that she knows and realizes that love is important. And we're always stressing, I love you, and giving hugs and kisses. And Hannah's always like, Mom, I love you. Even if we've done things like, we just went to Lake Michigan this past week to go swimming and stuff. And we were just paddling around the water, and she would come up in the water and like jump on me and say, Mom, I love you. Just every day-to-day activities. We're always telling them we love them. They need to know we love them. Pour yourself into your kids, especially when they were younger. When they're younger, snuggle more, hug more, and forgive more. One of my biggest regrets is when I had so many little kids, I didn't just take time to sit and like savor them being little. Now, with my last couple newborns, I knew my time was winding down. I was becoming an older mom. I knew that I didn't have probably many childbearing years left. So I was very intentional with my last couple babies that I did take time out to just lay down while I nursed, take a breather, relaxed. Every time I nursed, I tried to look at them, savor them, as far as like savor what they look like, their little noises. There's nothing like it. And I really took time to slow down. Now with Hannah, I was forced to slow down because she was so tough learning how to nurse, and she was my worst nurser. And so I literally would sit in the recliner for hours with her, working on nursing and holding her and snuggling her and trying to get her used to nursing. So I was kind of forced to with her as child number 8. Thankfully, I had a little bit older kids that could help with things around the house. I would just kind of direct the home from my recliner. And that was tough, but it was also special in a way because she's most likely going to be our last. And so the Lord knew I just needed to savor that time with her, enjoy that time with her, as being the baby of the family. So, take time to really look at them when they talk to you, and then listen to them. as they're talking to you. We can get distracted. We can be on our phone. We're like, We're not really listening to what they're saying. So oftentimes when the babies come up to me, I have to put my phone down and I have to intentionally look at them and say, what do you need? And then just they need to be listened to. Obviously, disciplining and correcting them is going to be part of loving them, right? Because the Bible talks about that. If you love your child, you're going to correct them, you're going to discipline them. But it shouldn't be something that's done in anger, something that's abusive. One of the things that just was crazy to me reading this book that I mentioned earlier in the show was that this dad was so crazy with this discipline and like daily beatings that he would give his kids, which would last upwards of 30 to 40 minutes. And I'm thinking, how do you not go crazy just constantly having discipline sessions? Like that would wear me out as a parent. I think now after reading the book, it was some kind of weird fetish thing with him. But normal parents, we don't want to spend all day long correcting our children, and it should not take 30, 40 minutes. The goal is not, and I've stated this before, the goal is not to break the will or the spirit of our child, which was often taught in the 80s and the 90s. The fruit of that has come out, and the fruit has been very damaged fruit. And I think parents in my generation are figuring out, for the most part, there's still some my age that are teaching very harmful things in the home. And there's younger parents that are soaking it up. And I really hate that. But that's why I'm trying to be a voice opposite of that. But fruit is speaking for itself, and it's produced very damaged adults who were beat sometimes within an inch of their life and had bore bruises and bore scars. One girl who was adopted and was tortured basically had over 400 scars on her body from the abuse that she endured. And normal parents, we don't want to destroy our children like that. We don't want to destroy their spirits. We don't want to destroy their will. We don't want to destroy who they are as a person. It's my kids' spunk and their will that make them who they are. So the goal should never be to leave lasting marks, to leave scars, to, have blood, whatever. One or two swats should be the extent of it. And it should not be abusive. It should not leave lasting scars. And it's crazy what people will do in the name of fundamentalism. And I think it's just revealing of their anger problems and their temper and their impatience. It's all coming out, and they need someone to take it out on. And unfortunately, it's an innocent child that is bearing the brunt of that. So discipline and correct, but in a godly way, always under control, never out of control, and never just using them to take your anger out on. And then guide with your life more than anything. Your kids are going to see the hypocrisy in the home. Your kids are going to see whether or not you really believe something or whether or not you don't believe something. Your kids are going to be able to see all that. So those are the three main things I wanted to talk about as far as keeping the main things, loving God, loving your husband and loving him well, and then loving your kids. But what about biblical womanhood in this day and age when it comes to keeping the home? Because we do see throughout history, women have kept the home and guided the home. The Proverbs 31 woman is obviously a model that we look up to. And it's written about a woman who was very successful in running her home. And it involved a lot. I don't believe it's wrong for a woman to have other sources of income from her home, because the Proverbs 31 woman did it. And if it was a sin, it wouldn't be talked about in a positive light. And, she considered a vineyard and she bought it. So she was a businesswoman. And I don't care what Lori Alexander says. She truly was. So there is a biblical mindset when it comes to keeping the home. And I do think that being a stay-at-home mom is the best way to do it. I do think God wants us in the home, guiding our children, teaching our children, training our children, and different things like that. And I'm sorry, I just noticed I was rocking. So I'm sorry if I'm making anyone seasick. It's because I'm so hot. When I get hot, I get flustered and it starts coming out in I don't know, things like that, even though it's probably going to make me more hot as I rock. So number one, utilize technology when it comes to guiding your home. Like I said, ChatGPT has its place. and it can come up with a really great menu plan. The other day, I took a picture of this cheese that I had, and I was like, give me a recipe to make for this cheese. And I came up with 3 different recipes, and I made one, and it was really good. So utilize technology to help you. Use your servants. And when I talk about servants, I mean your Instant Pot, your crock pot, your KitchenAid, your dishwasher, your toaster, your oven. Those are all your servants. Back in the day, Proverbs 31, woman did not have any of those things. So either she did it or her servants. Most likely, if she was from a well-to-do family, she was guiding the home as far as telling her servants what to do. But if she was from a poorer family, she did it all. She made her own bread. She washed her own clothes, and they didn't have a dishwasher. They didn't have a washing machine. They didn't have a dryer. They had to do all of that by themselves. So we are very blessed in the 21st century that we have these things that can help us. So use those things. Plan out your day. Figure out at breakfast what you're going to have for lunch. Figure out at lunch what you're going to have for supper, because that way you can throw things in the crock pot, the Instant Pot. The thing I love about the Instant Pot is when I was a young mom, they didn't have them. So when I was a young mom, I had to think very much ahead. So oftentimes I would use my crock pot literally 2 or 3 times a day. Before I went to bed, I would put, and this is especially when I only had like a $40 or $50 a week budget for groceries, when I had 3 little kids, we would do overnight cooked oats all the time. So that's basically steel cut oats, a handful of raisins, cinnamon, some brown sugar, water, salt in a crock pot overnight on low. I still love that. I think it's delicious. It's very filling, delicious, hot, warm meal in the morning. I would wash that out, and then I would throw something in there most of the time for supper. Lunch was often like a sandwich and a couple chips, a sandwich and fruit. So it was at least getting used twice a day. And then I got to where I had multiple crock pots. So I could throw a soup in there in the morning for lunch and then wash that out and throw something in there for supper. Or I could start a roast in the morning for supper and then have lunch in there in the morning as well. So, there's lots of thrift stores that have crock pots. If you don't have any crock pots, Instant Pots, I've seen every type of appliance at a thrift store. So you can get them very, very cheap. Bread machine, bread maker. I have 2 bread makers. One I was given for my wedding, and it still works after almost 25 years, which is crazy. And another, I found another at a thrift store, and I like using them to make a dough. I'll especially do this with pizza dough or cinnamon rolls. I'll throw everything in the dough and in there for the dough. And see, these are all very carb heavy meals, but this is what I did as a young mom when we didn't have a lot of income or extra meats and stuff like that. So we did have a lot of carb heavy meals, but you do what you do to survive. I would try to throw a little bit of meat in there, protein, but it was mainly chicken because we couldn't afford a lot of beef, couldn't afford steaks or anything like that. So you have to work with what you're given, but if you plan out your day, it's better than just going crazy at 4:30 because you don't know what to make for supper. Oftentimes, if I've not planned ahead, we fall back on breakfast for supper. So we'll do eggs and toast. We'll do pancakes or waffles and sausage links. It'll still have some type of protein in there, but we do breakfast for supper a lot. But yeah, every home will look different and have different schedules. But the main things when running a home should be, number one, keeping a clean home. We are privileged to be at stay-at-home moms. And because such, our husbands don't want to come home to a filthy home. They don't want to come home to chaos. I wouldn't want to come home to a filthy home, and I wouldn't want to come home to chaos if I left for a little bit. So keeping a clean home is important. I know it's important to my husband. It's probably important to most husbands. Having a safe home. We don't want exposed wires out. We don't want to have sharp things out where our kids can get cut or hurt. We don't want to have things hanging down that they can run into. As the moms, it's kind of our job to look out for that. And then a little dirt and grime is okay and to be expected, but it shouldn't be filth. It shouldn't be just unsanitary, chicken juice from the chicken that you cooked laying out everywhere. If you have an animal, it shouldn't be like animal feces on the floor. It shouldn't, if you have a bug problem, you need to get that under control. There are natural options that you can do. You can use diatomaceous earth, which is my go-to for every pest. Love that stuff. You can come up with things that won't harm your cats if you have them around. You can do little roach baits or ant baits that your cats can't get into. There's definitely things that you can do to get rid of rodents or bugs. And me personally, I can't live like that. So I have to get rid of it. And I don't think anyone wants to be in bed and have bed bugs crawling all over them or see a roach crawling or up the wall, in the middle of the night. So a little dirt and grime is okay, but it shouldn't be filth. It shouldn't be normal to live in a dirty, messy house. Bring glory to God in your home through the atmosphere. Oftentimes we have godly music playing, we have scripture playing, different things like that. Provide nourishing foods, but it's okay to throw pizza in every now and then. You don't need to. First of all, your home is not subject to criticism from anyone outside your home. And as long as your kids are getting fed, that's the most important thing. It's okay to feed the pizza once a week. It's okay to have a cereal night. It's okay, not to have it all together 100% of the time. As long as they're fed and healthy, that's the most important thing. So what about when it comes to this biblical womanhood when it comes to dress? I wanted to address this a little bit. Femininity and bringing glory to God is the most important thing. We want to look feminine. We want people to be able to tell a distinct difference in us. I stumbled across this reel today, and it got me going down this rabbit hole watching this reel, and I still couldn't figure it out by the end. But it was this reel of this, I think it's a man. It said recently detransitioned Christian. So I don't know, but he had whiskers, but he had long hair, but he was dating a woman. So I was really, 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 really confused. And honestly, with him or her, I think it was a man that had tried to become a woman and now was detransitioning to be a man again. I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell because of the hairstyle. I don't know. I'm still confused. I still haven't figured it out. But supposedly they just found Christ. I didn't look through enough to listen to the testimony, but they said they were on day 45 of being a new Christian. I don't know. All that to say is I definitely could not tell with this person. I could not tell if they were a man. I could not tell if they were a woman. And as women who are proclaiming Christ, there should be a clear difference. Now, you put me next to my husband, you're going to be able to tell I'm a woman and he's a man. Okay, there's no doubt about it. Because we're dressed very differently. I have long hair. He does not. I wear makeup. He does not. I have pierced ears. He does not. I have long hair. He does not. I wear skirts. He does not. So femininity and bringing glory to God is the most important. The world is trying to blur the line, and they have all these people going trans and all this, and it gets super confusing. And I do think confusion should be avoided at all costs. So I was just explaining to Kelly today how boys and girls should dress differently because we want people to be able to tell we're girls, and we want brothers and dad, Tommy and Jason and their dad, we want people to be able to tell they're men. And, it's important not to cause confusion at all. So for me, the way I dress and the way I present myself is number one, to bring glory to God. Dress standards are great, but it's better not to wear a skirt and treat people with love and kindness versus looking perfect on the outside, but treating everyone like dirt. I'm sick of, and I've seen it, these Pentecostal women that have just super high dress standards. I mean, their skirt's longer than mine. Their hair's longer than mine. They don't wear a shred of makeup yet, but they are mean as snakes to people in their community, people in their congregation, people in their family. They're mean, mean, mean. And I just have a hard time with people who are mean. So I don't care if you look the perfect part, you look the perfect IFB part on the outside. If you are as mean as a snake to everyone you come in contact with, that's hypocrisy, actually, because why are you making clean the outside, but inside you are very mean-hearted, So it's more important to have a good heart, especially towards God and towards others, than it is to look the part on the outside. The most important thing is the clear distinction between a man's garment and a woman's garment, and then dress to please your husband, no one else's. Do your hair the way your husband likes. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It doesn't matter what anyone else says. And if he's okay with an item of clothing, that should be all that matters, because in he is the head of the family, so he kind of sets the standard for how he wants you and your daughters to dress. And if he's okay with a particular item of clothing, then that's going to be on him if he says is okay. So, but then what about biblical womanhood when it comes to behavior? Being respectful of others has never gone out of style. I don't care what era you live in. There's many verses about the tongue, a ton of verses about the tongue in the Bible. And there's this thing called a meek and quiet spirit. And that does not have to do with necessarily the things that come out of your mouth, like the things that you're saying. Meek and quiet is just not drawing attention to ourselves, not loud and boisterous in public situations, not always trying to be the center of attention. There's some of us that our husbands like our personalities, they like our spirit, and they like our spunk. And if we are in subjection to them and we are following what they want, then our spirit is meek and quiet when it comes to them, because we're not going against them. We're not, pushing against them. We're not constantly arguing with them and fighting with them or whatever. So let's be feminine in our speech, our manner of life, even in public. One of the stereotypes of Americans is that they're loud and boisterous. And I would say that this is probably true. My husband and I were at a restaurant this past Friday, and there was a group of people, and they were just being so loud and just laughing loud and talking loud. And my husband was just like, Americans, and rolled his eyes. I was like, yeah, it's very American to be that way. I said, but I honestly don't mind that, because I don't like it when I'm in a restaurant and you can hear a pin drop and you can literally hear the topic that everyone's talking about. Like, I just don't like that. I don't want people eavesdropping on me and my husband when we're out. I'm trying not to eavesdrop on other people, but it's hard when you can hear everything they're talking about. So I actually prefer a noisy situation in a restaurant where no one's going to be listening to my husband and I or a conversation, and we just kind of can have a private chat between us two, with the noise drowning everything else out. So, but I will say that Americans are known for being loud and boisterous, and even American women are known for being that way. And as women of God, Christian women, I think we should strive to be a good example in this area, not trying to draw attention to ourselves, not trying to be the center of attention all the time, but just having that, quiet also means not tumultuous, not boisterous, not seeking attention. And I believe we should have that type of personality, especially in public situations. But biblical womanhood in our demeanor, how we treat others, how we respond to criticism, and criticism will come our way. Some of it is unearned criticism. Some of it is unjust criticism. But if you live, you're going to have criticism from the outside world, from your kids, from your husband. And how we respond to that shows where our maturity level is, how our spiritual maturity is, how our maturity as a person is. If we respond harshly and go over the top and just put down and criticize them in return, it shows that we're really not that spiritually mature. But if we're able to take it with a grain of salt, we're able to do self-reflection and ask ourselves, is there a merit of truth to this? If we can be honest with ourselves and say, there might be a little bit of truth to this, maybe I should work on this, or say, no, this is completely unfounded. This is coming from a place of angerness or bitterness or wrath on their part, and I am just the one bearing the brunt of it. If we can be honest with ourselves and really examine and be self-reflective, I think that's a good trait to have. And then just being able to respond kindly to criticism, not lashing out, not becoming angry, not using foul language, whatever. How about being biblical in our social media presence? Do we air dirty laundry with our spouse? Do we talk badly about our spouse? Do we put him down? How do we talk about our husband? Do we have an encouraging presence? Tackling the hard topics of life is different from being a busybody and a gossip. Sometimes there's hard issues of life. Sometimes there's abusive situations that need to be called out or addressed. Sometimes uncomfortable subjects need to be talked about. But it should be done in a way. And one thing I've tried to do with my writing, and as I have tried to build up, I've tried not to tear down with it. And you can always tell a lot about the spirit behind what someone is posting. Is someone posting this as a way to just cut down all women that aren't exactly like her, or cut down anyone who doesn't have the same opinion as her? You know, I've always encouraged open dialogue on my posts on my Facebook. I do not delete comments with the exception of them being full of profanity and or perversion. Those are the only comments I will delete because I don't want that on my wall, especially since my kids read what's on my wall and they read the comments and, you know, different things like that. So I don't want that on my wall, but I will leave up comments that disagree with me, even comments that are telling me off a lot of times. And, you know, that being said, not everyone deserves a response. So we don't have to get involved in every single fray. We don't have to respond to everything, especially if it's known that it's coming from a place of insecurity on the other person's part. If they are looking for someone to blame, we don't have to respond. And I will leave comments up. However, not all of them elicit a response from me. There are some where I just refuse to respond because I know the spirit behind the comment. I know if they're coming on to attack me, to find fault in me, or I know if they're truly looking to understand my position. Like, why does your brain this work way? Why does your brain work this way? Why do you think this way? You know, whatever. I know I've talked about it before, but I was sent an email well over a year ago by a lady who does not believe the same way as I do. She does not live her life the same way I do. But she was just throwing a couple things out there that I think she thought I would get very offended by. And I wasn't offended by them. I was like, that's very interesting. Can we talk about this more? So we started emailing. It went to where I actually met up with her when I went on a trip abroad. And now we stay in contact through WhatsApp. And I am not a person who likes to surround myself with just yes men or people who think exactly like me. I want to grow and I want to stretch and I want to be able to communicate effectively and communicate well. And you cannot be a good communicator if you refuse to step outside your comfort zone, first of all, and then your little box of ideas or beliefs. You have to be able to communicate effectively why you believe what you believe and have the goods to back it up, not just say things and then get mad at anyone who disagrees with you. That's not a good communicator. So I like being able to communicate effectively. That's one of my goals in life. Communicate effectively with my husband, with my children, with my church members and my friends, with those close to me, with all of you online. I want to be a good communicator. And, you know, that being said, you're not ever going to get that if you just create an echo chamber for yourself. If you turn off, delete anyone who doesn't agree with you, you know, whatever it is. So I think that the spirit behind how we say things, what we say can be very biblical. It can be Christian-like, or it can be very worldly and very rough and very ignorant. So, and then just remember though, once you write something online, it will be screenshot forever. Okay, guys, I have a professional dashboard now because I didn't want to lose all my followers. So I switched to that, and I can go and I can see my audience now. I don't think I could do that before with a personal page. 30% of the people who view my things are not my followers. They're not friends with me. They're not my followers, which means almost a third of my audience is people who probably are looking at my posts like Nellie Osom used to look at things, like with the sneer on her face, right? So 30% are reading my stuff just to get angry, to get mad. I don't know why. But 30% of the people who read my stuff aren't even my friend, or they don't even follow me. So I know that the instant I hit publish, there's going to be screenshots probably within a minute of me posting it. And so I understand that, and I understand the ramifications of it. And so I'm very careful knowing that anything I put out there is going to be screenshot forever and will be on file, someone's file forever. And then what is our reputation? Is it a biblical reputation, or, you know, is it a bad reputation? What are we known for? And this could be any other area of life. This could be, what are we known for online? You know, what do our kids think about us? What do our kids and our husband think about us? That's the most important thing to me. After that would be my church members, my family, my friends, you know, that matters the most to me. I really don't care what people online think about me because they don't know me in person, first of all. And there's I don't even consider myself a good speaker. Like doing this podcast every week, I'm still very uncomfortable about it. I was talked into it years ago, and I'm still very uncomfortable about it because I don't consider myself a good speaker. I say a lot. I fumble for words a lot. I'm not able to sit here and think like I am when I'm writing. Sometimes I'll just be paused and I'll formulate exactly how I want to write something, and then I'll put it down. And like that didn't come out very well. So I'll go back and erase it and write it another way. It's lots and lots of time of editing, going back, erasing things, putting it in a better way because I want to be an effective communicator. So when I'm speaking, I just don't have a lot of self-confidence when it comes to speaking. So I can come across in a way I'm not intending when I'm speaking. I would much rather write than I would speak. So those of you that watch me online, you really don't know me. You're not going to know me until first you visit our church and you see what our church is like and you interact with me on a personal level. And that's why some of these online attacks have been so silly, because I've had friends for decades and they've seen some of them and they get righteously angry, right? Because they're like, why are these people saying this about you? They don't know you at all. And I'm like, I know, but there's not going to be any change in their mind. So the online presence, that doesn't really affect my day-to-day life, but it does affect my day-to-day life, what my kids think about me and what my husband thinks about me and what my friends think about me and what my church members think about me and what my peers think about me in real life. That does affect my day-to-day life. So I'm going to be more focused on fostering those relationships versus the online persona relationships, right? So that's going to be more important to me. And it should be important to you what your kids think about you and what your husband thinks about you and what your family thinks about you and what your friends think about you. That should be an important part of your life as well. So just remember, all of these things I talked about, it is all biblical womanhood. The reason that we live this way is, number one, to bring glory to God. And if we have a bad testimony with others, if we're constantly freaking out, losing our temper and cussing and like doing bad business deals, and we have a horrible reputation around town, that's going to hurt what people think about the Lord. Because especially if they know that we're claiming to be a Christian, that's in their mind going to make God look very bad. And we should, as Christians, never want to make God look bad. So that is why I promote godly living and separation and standards, and why our speech is important. Because if we are a Christian, our speech should point others to Christ. It shouldn't be full of profanity and cussing, just like the world. It shouldn't be full of that stuff. Our speech should be edifying, glorifying God, bringing, pointing people to Him, showing that we are different from the majority of the population. We should be different. We should look different. We should act different. We should treat our husbands different. We should treat our children different. So biblical womanhood hasn't really changed all that much with the core doctrines. I do believe that it's still possible to live in femininity today. It's still possible to be a biblical wife and be a biblical mom and, have our priorities correct. But it will take a little bit of work because we do have a lot of things stacked against us. And there's that again. And we do have a lot of things stacked against us. And it's going to take a little bit more purpose, a little bit more ambition, a little bit more gumption to be a biblical wife and mom in today's day and age, but it's definitely possible. So I hope that helped. And I hope you all have a great week. And next Monday, I will not be around. I might skip it. I might do one on Sunday. I'm not sure yet. I'll see if Nicole's ready to do another one. I might record one on Sunday and then premiere on Monday, because I will be visiting my best friend in Missouri all week. They are having their VBS next week. And I always like taking the kiddos because they have a lot of fun. So I will be back the following Monday, though, which I think, okay, yeah, no, it's not Labor Day. So not Labor Day yet. I'll be back the following Monday, though, for Gently Led then. So I hope you all have a good week. Go love your husbands. First of all, go love God. Go love your husbands and go love your kids and love them well. And we will see you guys later.